Hey everyone, welcome back to Great Sports Debates. We're about to jump in week 4 power rankings as the season's just flying by. And the big surprise, we have a new team in the basement. At number 32, we have the 0-3 Tennessee Titans. They've lost to the Bears. They got smoked by the Packers last week with a backup quarterback. And they lost to the Jets. So, while they've been competitive in some of these games and even leading, Levis usually finds a way to lose. This team is going to have a hard time winning games. At 31, we have the New England Patriots. This is kind of the I told you so when they, won their first game and we still had them in the low 20s. This team's just not going to be able to win games because their offense isn't strong enough. The coach is doing everything right. They're calling run plays. They're playing defense the best they can. But the quarterback doesn't have time. The quarterback doesn't have the skill. And frankly, the weapons aren't that great that they have to throw to. So I don't think Drake May is going to be the answer either. At 30 is the Miami Dolphins. And I'm sure there's a few Dolphins fans out there that are going to say this is too low despite them playing worse and worse each week, but they don't have a quarterback. Their offensive line cannot provide protection. They just got stomped by the Seahawks. Honestly, I feel like 30 is generous based on what they've provided so far in the season. And I don't even know how much of a difference it's going to make when Tua gets back, because at the end of the day, you need to have time to throw the ball. At 29, we got the Las Vegas Raiders. This is just really a confusing team. They upset me. They cost me some money this week. They played terrible against Carolina. Unmotivated, and this is a team that's not talented enough to not show up to a game. They're just not that good to begin with. Like we said, the quarterback, I'm not a fan of. The offensive line is not great. Outside of the second half they played against the Ravens, this could arguably be the worst team in football. So, again, 29 feels a little bit generous, but I just don't see a lot of hope for the Ravens. I know the coach wasn't happy, and maybe he makes some cuts, and it gives the team a little more motivation coming up for next week, but still, they don't really have the guys to make things happen consistently. All right, at 28, kind of rounding up the just really no hope teams, is the best of that bunch. That's the Chicago Bears. A lot of the same issues as some of these other teams. Bad offensive line. But the Bears actually have a pretty good defense. Their biggest issue is going to be Caleb Williams continuing to develop and hopefully get better. But, man, that dude's under pressure a lot. He's taking a lot of hits. It might be the worst offensive line in football. So, I don't know how great that's going to help him developing his game. Like I said, this guy's already taken a ton of hits. And he hasn't played exactly stellar football. Although, I see promise with this guy. So, the Bears are in a tough spot because they're already 1-2. And they might be playing in the toughest division in football. At 27, we got our Tier 5 teams. We don't expect anything out of these teams either. However, they are a step above the very worst. And with Cleveland, it's their defense. The problem is they're the bottom of this tier grouping because the offense just isn't good. Watson might get pulled at some point. I know nobody's saying anything yet, but his drop-off from, if you just pull up his stats from when he was at Houston and lay him next to his stats in Cleveland, I have never seen anybody fall off a cliff like this guy. No serious injury. I know he had a little bit of time off, but the guy's young. I don't know. I think Watson's done. It's been, 2.5 years now of really subpar play. So, yeah, Cleveland is not going to have the offense to beat better teams. They lost to the Giants this last week. Stick a fork in them. They're done. All right, at 26, we have those New York Giants. If you watched the podcast, we told you to bet the over yardage on Neighbors. He's already I'd say almost a third of the way to what his number was for the entire season. He's among the league leader in yardage, and this is just one of those things where the Giants gave us extra information. We already knew this guy was an elite player coming out of the draft. And then the Giants being one of the few teams playing some of their starters, and they did the joint camp with the Lions where you get to see Neighbors got targeted by Jones a lot. And he produced with those targets. So that's kind of a combination that spells out like, hey, this guy's going to get an opportunity. So his second game, he had his first 100-yard game. After another big game this week, he's among the league leaders in receiving yardage and receptions. That's a bright spot on the Giants. Daniel Jones always has these good games mixed in with some bonehead mistakes. So while I don't think he's an answer, he's definitely good enough to win you some games. I still don't expect a lot from the Giants, but they did get their first win of the season. On that same note, we have the Denver Broncos checking in at number 25. I'm not a big Bo Nix fan, but he played pretty good, and he wound up costing me some money as they stomped the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last week, and they got their first win of the season. Now, the interesting thing is, if Nix can play somewhat well, and they can figure out their rushing attack, the guy they've been starting at running back has not produced. I think they should be looking at a change there. If they can actually run the ball, and Bo Nix can play decent, Denver's defense is going to wind up looking a lot better. I'm not going to say that they're going to be a playoff team because they're definitely not as good as Kansas City in their same division. But, maybe they could go on a run. Maybe they could get to be a middle tier team. Maybe they could be a 500 team. But that's going to depend on Nix continuing to get better. So right now we have them at 25. At 24, and this is coming before the Monday night games, we got Washington. They're 1-1. We bumped them up a little bit just because of how bad some teams have been. They have the rookie quarterback that has that additional dual threat ability that's going to help him early on in his career. And Washington has just enough weapons and just strong enough on their defensive line to put them ahead of the bottom tier teams. At 23, we have the Colts. The Colts were able to escape with their first win over the lowly Bears. They are going to be a boom and bust team. I don't think Anthony Richardson has the accuracy and the consistency for them to win a lot of games this year. In fact, if they did the same playbook that I've said the Eagles and the Ravens should be doing, and he threw like 15 to 20 times a game and handed off to their good running back behind their good offensive line and ran a handful of times, they'd probably be a plus 500 team. Because Richardson's a freak athlete, he's super fast, big dude, strong, and he's got a cannon for the arm, so he can keep teams honest over the top. It's just a matter of his consistency and accuracy keeping them in games. So Colts are going to be one of those teams, I think, this year that might knock off some teams better than them, but might also lose to some teams worse than them. Okay, at number 22, we have the Carolina Panthers jumping up 10 spots out of the basement. And boy, was I surprised. And again, this was another one that hurt that we talked about. Carolina looked like one of the worst football teams we've seen over the last 20 games or so during the Bryce Young reign. And I think, for one thing, this totally destroyed any trade value he might have had because the entire team looked completely different. And I don't want to go too crazy because it's against the Raiders, but Andy Dalton had 3 touchdowns in the first quarter. And I don't know if Bryce Young ever had that in an entire game his entire run. So the offense looked better, the line blocked better, the running backs ran better. Of course, they came out opening up, and he was hitting guys in stride. So it opened my eyes to a couple of things. I I underrated the Red Rifle's ability to deliver still at this age and not playing for a while. Even being one of the harshest critics of Bryce Young, I think I still underestimate how terrible he was. Because like I said, the Panthers just looked like they were in their own league, how bad they were. And they were able to win 36-22 over the Raiders. And a lot of that Raiders scoring was garbage time late desperation scoring. So this game was a rout. It wasn't close at all. We'll see what Andy and the Panthers can bring next week and hopefully figure them out a little bit. At 21, we got the Cincinnati Bengals. They have yet to win a game, I believe. And they had their game on Monday, today, against Washington, which should be their first win, and they're at home. So if they lose that game, they're in a lot of trouble. But they looked a lot better against Kansas City. They weren't able to pull that one off. I think they should be able to win here. They're over a touchdown favorite. So it's time to see what Cincinnati's all about. At number 20, we got Jacksonville. They're also 0-2, and I do expect them to lose to the Bills today. They are a 5.5-point underdog, and the Bills have looked like they're pretty darn good on offense. So not trusting the Jags to beat the Bills. But again, like Cincinnati, if they start 0-3, it's probably time to stick a fork in them. Now, at number 19 is the Dallas Cowboys. I know some people are going to come for me on this. The expectation was just that the Cowboys were going to be better. They're 1-2, but the scariest part is the same problem they had last year. Looks like it might be worse this year despite the added pieces. They can't stop the run. They gave up 257 rushing yards against the Ravens, and that's with the Ravens coasting and shutting it down late in the game. 257 yards is like 100 yards more than some teams have given up all year. And it's more rushing yards they gave up in that game than several teams have given up on the year. So this looks like something that they're really going to have to figure out, because if teams are going to be able to run on them like that, they're going to have a hard time beating anybody. And we saw it with the Saints. That kind of led to us overrating the Saints a little bit, the way they were able to run on the Cowboys. Now the Ravens were able to run on the Cowboys. They're going to have some trouble because they still have some running teams that are going to play down the road, like the Lions and twice against Philly. And those all add up really bad unless they figure something out. And how many people are you going to have to jam in the box, and what is that going to open up? So scary time for Cowboys fans. So think about all that before you get upset at seeing the Cowboys at number 19. Okay, at 18, we have the Arizona Cardinals. Their offense got slowed down a little bit by mistakes and running the ball, but they still put up a fair showing, and they were never completely out of it until the end against the Lions. But the Lions had a little bit too much firepower for them to overcome. I still think that Kyler Murray's having his best year. He's able to pick up yardage with his feet. Connection with Marvin Harrison Jr. a little more, because I think that's going to be explosive once they get that figured out. So Cardinals had a low scoring day for them with 13 points, but I think that they're going to have a strong offense, and it'll be interesting to see how they're able to bounce back against a team that they should beat, playing Washington at home next week. All right, moving on to number 17. We have the LA Chargers, and we didn't bump them down too much. I know some of you guys said I had them too low when they were 2-0 last week, but they lost to the Steelers as expected. Both teams have really strong defenses. So if you remember, you saw that we took the Steelers giving up the points as well as the under, and both of those hit. The Chargers are a little bit challenged offensively. If they can't run on a team, that makes it a little tougher. Their quarterback, Herbert, I don't think is just right. He's kind of been on and off the field. The weapons he have are a little bit questionable. But again, they were playing a tough Steelers defense. I actually thought this was one of the better Chargers showing, despite them losing the game 20-10. We'll see how they bounce back again. They're in the same division with the Chiefs, so that always makes things tough. But assuming that they can be better than both Denver and the Raiders, maybe they have a above 500 season. All right, next we got at number 16, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is a tough team to figure out. Mayfield can do well enough when he has time because he has weapons and everything around him. They have a hard time when they're not able to run the ball on offense, though. I'm going to have to go back and see more of that Denver game because I'm kind of surprised on how badly they got beaten down. Putting up 7 points is not going to get it done for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But again, that's their first loss in the season. It is the NFL. Things happen. We'll see how they bounce back and recover next week. At 15 is the New York Jets. This is one of the tougher teams for me to rate. They are 2-1. They lost their first game. They barely beat Tennessee. And they looked like world beaters against New England. But again, it was against New England. So the reason why I like to jump them up is we talked about their defense is good. What I saw, and like I said, I know it was against the Patriots, but Aaron Rodgers looked good. And I think if Aaron Rodgers has time, just from what I saw last week, maybe he can be closer to his old self than he looked earlier on. I think a lot of that is going to depend on how well they're able to protect them. Maybe they'll need to do some max protect schemes to help a shoddy offensive line so he has time. But he was masterful in that game against New England. So Jets could be a sneaky team to watch out for. At 14, we got the Atlanta Falcons. Atlanta played Kansas City about as good as they could. There's definitely the questionable call everyone's talking about that might have led to Atlanta winning the game. But, all in all, they had their chances. They came up a little bit short. I think Kirk Cousins is looking better every week. So that is kind of the good thing for them. The scary part about Atlanta is they had several critical short, 3rd and 1, 4th and 1s, even at the end of the game where they can't pick up 1 yard and their identity is supposed to be running the football. So that's definitely a concern for me. They did not run the ball well against the Chiefs. Again, the Chiefs have a pretty tough defense, but that's something that I would watch if you're an Atlanta fan going forward is how well are they going to be able to run the ball and run the ball in critical times. That division is wide open, by the way. At 13 is Seattle. I honestly feel like this is too high. Seattle's one of the teams I probably watched the least. They did blow out Miami team that we're not super high on right now. Their other 2 games were close against lesser teams, but they are 3-0, and they did beat the teams in front of them. The Seahawks, a lot of it's going to hang on Geno Smith. They do best when they play as a running team as well, and then Geno can hit the big, play action or, occasional pickups. He's got DK and some weapons around him. So how well is Seattle's defense going to hold up? They've been playing pretty good, at least by the scores they've been allowing so far. Maybe I'm wrong on this one. Maybe we got to see Seattle a little more. I'm sure most Seattle fans are going to say, hey, dude, they're 3-0. There's only a handful of 3-0 teams. Why are they at 13? Well, maybe we'll see more this week when they play Detroit. And that's a game that I looked to bet already. And Detroit's already a good-sized favorite, and it looks like it's spreading. So it seems like the consensus isn't on Seattle quite yet either. But this upcoming week will tell a lot about the Seattle Seahawks. At 12, we got the LA Rams. Now, I've been killed because people said stick a fork in them. Puka's out, Cup's out, 76 offensive linemen are out. They're done. But like I've said from week 1, I don't know what happened in that Arizona game, but if you give Matt Stafford time, he's going to make people look good. This guy's a top quarterback, man. He's going to figure it out. It's kind of like Josh Allen, where you take all of his pieces and you throw in new pieces, and it's not a problem. These guys have elite arm talent. Stafford's a pretty smart guy. They were able to come back and beat a pretty tough 49ers team. And then they got the Bears coming up this week. So Rams could get on a little bit of a roll. They start getting pieces back. They're not dead. That's what I'm saying. They're a talented offensive team. They are not dead. At number 11 is the New Orleans Saints. They are 2-1. The Eagles gave them every chance to win that game. But the offense that was explosive against Dallas and Carolina looked like doo-doo against Philadelphia. But, that's a whole nother level defense. And the problem is, if the Saints can't run the ball, it doesn't really open everything up for the pass. They really couldn't do anything at all on offense. Like I said, Philly shot themselves in the foot a lot of times, gave the Saints a lot of opportunities to win. They just couldn't do it. So that take a little shine off the Saints, but we still know that Kamara's going to hit his rushing yardage number. I mean, that's almost a guaranteed check mark. David Carr can continue to be good. Their fast wide receiver disappeared in that game against the Eagles, so not sure what happened there. Big game this week against the Falcons. Probably going to tell a lot about who's going to win that division right there. So you already know we're pulling for the Falcons in that one. At number 10 is the ugliest team in football. It's the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're 3-0. And the only part that frustrates me is every time I turn on or see ESPN or I go on social media, I'm hearing people talk about, look what Fields is doing. Chicago messed up. Well, I've been watching the games, and Fields hasn't been doing that much. He's made some big plays because he's gotten multiple opportunities because of their defense. Fields is a good fit for them. Don't mess it up. Be able to pick first downs up with your feet. Hand the ball off a lot. If you look at Fields' numbers, they're pretty similar to what they were in Chicago. The only difference is he's getting more opportunities in Pittsburgh because their defense keeps giving him the ball and giving him the ball in good field position. The Steelers' defense is just sick. I don't think anyone scored over 10 points on them yet this season. All right, moving on. At number 9, we got the Philadelphia Eagles. This is a super frustrating team for me. We've talked about it before. Just hand the ball off to Saquon. And they didn't do it enough, but once they started doing it late in the game, he broke a big one. He was hitting good yardage even before he didn't break a big one. Like, you have this guy. Make it easy on Hurts. Don't give Hurts the opportunity to make a million mistakes, especially when his top dude is out. Hand the ball to Saquon. And it's so frustrating that Philly doesn't commit to the run because it's not like, well, now we're getting in 2nd and 8 or we're in 3rd and 8 because we ran it twice. No, this dude's picking up 4 or 5 yards a pop. Keep giving him the ball. Barkley needs to get like 20 to 25 carries a game, and Hurts needs to have like 15 to 20 throws a game and run the ball. And that's when Philly looks best, and they might be the top team in the league if they just figured out that simple thing. And then when AJ comes back, you continue to do the same thing. He's just an elite weapon when you do that trick play called the pass, or when you have that 3rd and long play where you have to pick it up. You have a guy you can go to. Eagles are 9, but they could be better. I think a lot of it is coaching and how they use their personnel. They got a great offensive line. They got a great defensive line. That's where the games are won. I really like Philadelphia's potential. And I might have to look and see what I can bet on them winning the division, because I think that's pretty much a lock too. Number 8, San Francisco. Okay, I know they're 1-2. However, they got a lot of pieces out. They lost to Minnesota. I don't know how the Rams came back and won that game that they were winning the whole time. I just like this team. It's going to take several losses for me to get off the 49ers bandwagon. I think they have the players and potential where they could be a tier 1 team, but I have to have them at tier 2 right now because they just haven't done it quite yet. At 7 is Houston. Again, Houston shot themselves in the foot a couple of times, but they couldn't stop Minnesota at all. And that's going to be a problem that they have to figure out on the defensive end, because Houston has not played up to what people expected based on the guys they have on paper. So they're 2-1, but it's a shaky 2-1, and I got them at 7. think they have the pieces to put it all together. I like the coach. Let's see what changes Houston makes and how good they can be this year. Side note, they have a particularly soft division, so they're going to rack up some wins when they get into that part of the season as well in the divisional games. Just look at their division, you'll see what I mean. At 6, we got Green Bay. They're 2-1. Only loss was a close game against Philly, and they won both of their games with their backup quarterback who's played horrendous elsewhere. I mean, granted, most of that time was in Tennessee, but they have a smart game plan. They got a strong offensive line. Their defense is solid, and they got a young, fast, athletic wide receiving core. So all the pieces are there for Green Bay to be good. They could be one of those teams vying for the Super Bowl. I know I got them where it's listed at Tier 2 now, but they could be Tier 1 team, and they're going to have an opportunity to prove that this week in a tough game against the Vikings. Okay, at 5, and their play hasn't shown this so far. I got Detroit, though. I just feel like they have too many weapons. I think that they're going to be a threat when it comes to the end of the year. Goff bounced back and played a little bit better, and it made a huge difference. And despite several boneheaded mistakes, bad turnovers by the Lions, they were really never in doubt of losing the game against the Cardinals. You got Aiden Hutchinson rushing the passer. Again, kind of like we said with the Eagles and some of these other teams, they need to just hand the ball off more. You got 2 guys you can feed. So this offensive line, if it's as good as people are saying they are, and as good as it's looked at some points, you should be able to just slam the ball with Gibbs and Montgomery. Make defenses bring other guys up. And I think that was part of the reason that they had trouble in Tampa Bay. They didn't run the ball well. But if you're a top offensive line, you should be able to run the ball on most teams at will. The only scary part about Detroit right now is like they just lost 3 more defensive stars last week. So I don't know the status on those guys yet. They got a big game against Seattle, and historically over the last couple of years, they have not played great against Seattle. This is an excellent opportunity where I think they have a much improved run defense, especially with DJ Reader in there, and assuming Aleem McNeil is healthy and able to get back to play, they can take away that element from Seattle, and they should be able to win that game. All right, top 4 teams. At number 4, we got the Baltimore Ravens. You guys come for me about the Ravens being too high every week. I don't care. I think this team's going to be a factor in the AFC. And they went to the formula we've been saying. 257 rushing yards in their game against the Cowboys. Now, you know we've already said the Cowboys don't have a great run defense. But still, you're running the ball for 257 yards on a team. You physically manhandled that team. Every single week, Derrick Henry has gotten better. I think he's going to continue to earn more carries. Lamar is still going to be a threat to run. And if they're just a running team where Lamar makes plays when he has to, that is when Baltimore is at its best. And I think Baltimore is a team that can beat anybody. So despite the 0-2 start, I still think they're going to win that division too. That's going to be tough, though, because Pittsburgh's pretty good, and they got a few games ahead of them. But I think it's Baltimore's division to lose. At 3, we got the Buffalo Bills. Oh, this is scary how high we have the Bills, because they haven't been really tested. They played Arizona, Miami, and again, this is before the Monday night game against the Jags. But the offense looks good, and I haven't got enough time to really watch and think about the defense, but they've won both of their games, and Josh Allen has proven, swap out his weapons, put whoever with him, he's still going to make big plays with his arm and with his feet. So Buffalo's 3 for now until proven otherwise. Again, they're not going to be in Tier 1 because I haven't seen enough of them yet. But with that said, let's move into the 2 teams we have at Tier 1. At number 2, it's the Minnesota Vikings. They're 3-0. They played some big-time football, and they beat some pretty good teams. They smoked the Texans. It wasn't close. It looks like Minnesota is able to run the ball at will. It looks like Sam Darnold has a lot of time, and he knows he can get that ball to JJ, and that guy's always open. They made a lot of free agent changes to the defense. It looks like that defense is able to generate a lot of pressure. So really everywhere you want to be strong, Minnesota looks like they are strong. They beat the 49ers as well. And they smoked the Giants week 1. So if we went by how teams have looked so far, the Vikings would be number 1 because they played some good teams and they have dominated. But the number 1 team, couple games they could have lost, but they didn't. 2-time defending Super Bowl champions. As long as they have Patrick Mahomes, that dude's so good. He can run and pick up the first down. He can scramble in the pocket and buy times. And he's on script with some guys. Him and Kelsey have that mental connection. And Rice is the guy for him right now receiving. And they're able to run the ball no matter who's back there. They proved that last week. They just have a strong offensive line, especially the middle parts. If they could upgrade at tackle, man, this would be a scary offense. The defensive side, you got Chris Jones and the boys up front. He's always a threat. He can move around and kind of go wherever he wants to on the offensive line and take advantage of matchups. Got 2 stud linebackers. And even though they lost Snead in the backfield, you still have McBride, who's like all-pro caliber back there. So pretty much all the way around, man. Chiefs are just a tough team. They're a smart team. They're a well-coached team. And they always seem to figure out a way to get done. And we know they're going to be a factor at the end of the year. And we know they're the class of their division. So it's hard to go against the Chiefs until proven otherwise. So that's our power rankings. That's who we got. Let me know in the comments what you think. We should have our picks out either tomorrow or Wednesday. And as always, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe.